and welcome to another episode of You Don't Know Jack, an HHN fancast. I'm your host, Nick. This fancast, which is not affiliated with Universal's Halloween Horror Nights in any way, aims to explore the history and speculation of the greatest horror event of all time. With all of the recent announcements surrounding this year's Halloween Horror Nights 35, excitement has been growing at an exponential pace. Among the houses announced, as predicted, we will get to see the return of legacy characters and stories from previous years. One in particular has caught the attention of myself and many other fans of the event. A character who has left a lasting legacy at the event, even though he is not technically an icon, has been revealed to be receiving his own house this season. Veterans of the event know his name well, while newcomers are in for a real treat. Halloween's favorite creature feature TV host, H.R. Bloodengutz, will be making his grand return in the house titled H.R. Bloodengutz Presents a Halloween Fright-tacular. But who exactly is this character? Where did he come from, and why are fans of the event so excited that he is making a return? That is the topic of today's episode as we explore the history of H.R. Bloodengutz. Even though H.R. Bloodengutz is not an actual HHN icon, with his return imminent and his character carrying a lot of weight, I felt he was worth his very own history of episode. In that vein, we will follow the same formula of previous history of episodes, covering the character's real-world origin, his appearances at the event, and his in-universe backstory. So let's not waste any more time and dive into the real-world origins of H.R. Bloodengutz. Coming off the success and minor controversy of Halloween Horror Nights 20 in 2010, Universal decided to continue with the creation of original icons hosting the event by bringing to life Lady Luck for Halloween Horror Nights 21 in 2011. For the story of the event, every house featured would tie into Lady Luck's story, which would have a character making a choice. We will dive into H.R. Bloodengutz's choice a little later when we go through his story, but it is his very choice that creates the character of H.R. Bloodengutz, who would host his own house titled H.R. Bloodengutz Presents Holidays of Horror. The idea came from creatives wanting to find a concept that combined the idea of a haunted house based on the evil versions of the holidays, as well as an original character to tie them all together that could connect to the story of the season. Apparently, this was an idea the creatives had been sitting on but hadn't found a way to bring it to reality until the character of H.R. Bloodengutz was presented to tie into the story of Lady Luck. It was a house billed as guest joining creature feature host H.R. Bloodengutz in his final televised broadcast as he presents a scare-a-thon of holiday-based horror. The house included twisted scenes of Valentine's Day, President's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Easter, Arbor Day, Independence Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. It was the comedy house of the year, featuring lots of campy and gruesome moments. Since that is all there is to know about the character's conception, let's go for a walk through his original house and see if we can get an idea of what may await us this year. Before entering the house, guests were treated to a Q video featuring our titular character, introducing each of the holiday-themed creature features that awaited them inside the house. Along with introducing the features, H.R. Bloodengutz would be seen torturing the very producer who was responsible for the cancellation of his show through a variety of gruesome means that would tie into each holiday. He would shoot him with Cupid's arrow for Valentine's Day, cover his face with poison ivy for Arbor Day, stab him with a kitchen knife for Thanksgiving, put firecrackers in his body for Independence Day, remove his eye with a feather pen used to sign a Declaration of Independence prop for Independence Day, and staple garland to him for Christmas. Think Slaughter Cinema, but with one character connecting all of the stories instead of them being treated as separate entities. Upon entering the house through a dilapidated WKNB Channel 21 TV studio facade, guests made their way through each of the holiday-themed areas with transition sections between each scene. The transitions featured a vintage living room with a 1950s TV playing a brief clip from the outside cue video of the corresponding holiday. H.R. Bloodengutz was featured in person in the house, torturing his producer and welcoming guests to the festivities at the beginning of the house. Guests begin by entering into H.R. Bloodengutz' studio and then become part of the various holiday horror films as part of his Holidays of Horror broadcast. Each holiday movie has its own individual scene in the house, and each is preceded by a transition scene, which is a vintage living room with a 1950s era TV screen. Here, H.R. Bloodengutz will appear on the TV screen and introduce the next horror holiday movie that you are about to enter into. Each video which plays in the transition scenes are actually brief clips from the outside cue video of the corresponding holiday. Guests enter the house through the WKNB Channel 21 station and into H.R. Bloodengutz' studio, where he alternates between welcoming them into his final televised broadcast and torturing his producer, who is tied to a chair in the studio. From here, guests enter the first holiday room, Valentine's Day, where numerous severed body parts are seen struck by arrows into the walls as evil cupids attack from different areas throughout the room. The next scene is the Independence Day 4th of July room, where crates of fireworks are seen on the walls as the smell of gunpowder fills the air, and a corpse is seen with a giant firework rocket shoved into his mouth as zombie Uncle Sam pops out from different areas. The next scene is the Easter room, where balls of Easter basket confetti surprise guests from sides of the room. Towards the end of the scene, the Feaster Bunny, an evil giant Easter bunny, attacks guests from the left side. After this is the Arbor Day scene, where a girl is seen sawing a man in half on a table, distracting guests from different actors which pop out from the sides of the room. At the end of the scene, a giant tree attacks guests. Following this is the St. Patrick's Day room, where guests would walk around a pot of gold in the center of the room as evil leprechauns attack from behind rocks in different areas. Following is the President's Day room, as guests enter into the Oval Office and see a ticking time bomb on the Resolute desk as George Washington and Abraham Lincoln zombies attack guests from the corners in the room. Guests then enter the Thanksgiving Day scene, where a grandmother is seen roasted like a turkey and placed on a dining room table for the Thanksgiving feast as pilgrims and natives attack guests from throughout the room. The final scene is Christmas, where Santa's overworked elves attack while blasting toy machine guns around a fireplace and Christmas tree. As guests enter the room, Mrs. Claus is seen dead on a table, strangled with Christmas lights and with a stab wound in her back. As guests round the corner past the Christmas tree, Santa is shown decapitated on a chair with bullet holes dotting the walls behind him, as more, quote, toy machine gun blasting elves attack guests from throughout the room. The finale scene in the house is one final transition room where H.R. Bloodengutz appears on a TV screen and concludes the midnight horror show's Holiday of Horror broadcast before slitting his producer's throat. Guests then exit the house. Following his appearance, H.R. Bloodengutz would not be seen again until Halloween Horror Nights 30 in 2021, where he would make an appearance on a TV screen in the house titled Scary Ohio, Horror in the Heartland. That brings us to this year's Halloween Horror Nights 35, where H.R. Bloodengutz is making his grand return to the event in H.R. Bloodengutz Presents a Halloween Fright-tacular, a house set to bring in elements from previous years and feature H.R. Bloodengutz himself, both on TVs and in person. We will go over what to expect from his appearance this year a little bit later, but that pretty much covers everything to do with his real-world origins. But what about his in-universe story? Let's now learn everything there is to know about this twisted television host. Before he became the creature feature TV host H.R. Bloodengutz, Lawrence Kurtzberg, also known as Larry, was an actor and Broadway performer in the 1930s, who began his career at the Sherbert Theater in the musical comedy Babes in Arms at age 17. After years of performing, Larry retired to a life as a taxidermist. But that wasn't enough for him, and he became desperate for fame again in the 1970s. To quench this, Larry sought out a talent agency in Cary, Ohio, in hopes of landing a role in theater, television, and radio media once more. One day, he received a telephone message from a talent agent who would turn out to be Lady Luck. She told him the following.
Hello, Larry? Larry, if you're there, please pick up. This is Moira at the Audit Management Associates. Mr. Feld wanted me to call and tell you that the offer to play H.R. Bloodengutz for the WKNB Midnight Horror Show is the best offer the agency can get you. He understands this isn't great either, but it is a regular paycheck, and you could do worse. He also told me to tell you that if you choose to leave the business and work in your uncle's taxidermy shop, we will not be able to represent you anymore. The choice is yours. Have a nice day.
Larry took the offer and started working at the Channel 21 WKNB station. Within months, the Midnight Horror Show became one of the best horror variety shows at the time. Larry's character, H.R. Bloodengutz, resembled Al Lewis's character, Grandpa Munster, from the Munsters TV show. He had a very witty personality. With H.R. Bloodengutz serving as host, the show would present a wide variety of horror movies. Later, H.R. Bloodengutz would begin to host original horror comedy episodes about holidays such as Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Easter, President's Day, the 4th of July, Arbor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. It was here that Larry began to take his role as H.R. Bloodengutz a little too seriously. He demanded only to be referred to as his character's name and soon began to develop violent mood swings. 1 year later, the ratings began to drop dramatically as audiences found the holiday-themed horror episodes to be too disturbing. This, along with a devastating loss of advertising revenue, was enough to make the producer, John Reynolds, write a letter to Larry telling him that the H.R. Bloodengutz show had to be canceled. This drove Larry into a demented rage as he kidnapped Reynolds along with some of the TV crew. He brutally tortured the producer as he hosted and broadcast his holiday-themed episodes one last time. When the police finally arrived to arrest Larry, Reynolds was suffering from mortal wounds and died in the hospital he was brought to. The other members of the crew were released from hospital and immediately quit their jobs at the WKMB station. Larry Kurtzberg was placed in Cary Penitentiary for life, showing no remorse for torturing his producer. 15 years later, after his descension into violent madness, H.R. Bloodengutz escaped from Cary State Penitentiary on Halloween Day, returning to the WKMB television station for one final Halloween special of gruesome proportions. It featured a marathon of straight-to-TV Halloween films that were his favorites that he never got to showcase all those years ago. This final Halloween special is the setting for this year's haunted house, H.R. Bloodengutz Presents a Halloween Fright-tacular. It is amazing to see how a character that was not an icon can have such a lasting legacy at the event. After all, his story was only created for this original house and meant to support Lady Luck, but with how successful and beloved that original appearance was, it is no surprise to see that H.R. Bloodengutz has become an HHN staple. He will be a very welcome addition to celebrate the 35th anniversary of Halloween Horror Nights, and I personally believe that his house this year will become another fan favorite. Speaking of this year's house, there have been some new details released that go over what guests can expect from H.R. Bloodengutz. While there will be an episode later covering every single house of the event, why not dive into what we know about this newest appearance of our favorite horror television host? As we all know by now, H.R. Bloodengutz Presents a Halloween Fright-tacular is a direct sequel to the original house titled H.R. Bloodengutz Presents Holidays of Horror. The story will follow H.R. Bloodengutz himself as he has escaped from prison and returned to the WKMB station for one final Halloween special of gruesome proportions, sharing with us those straight-to-TV Halloween films mentioned earlier. H.R. Bloodengutz will apparently have a slightly new look, following the idea that he has escaped from prison and attempted to assemble his original look the best he could, but added some fresh twists. He is also older than before, as the creative team behind Halloween Horror Nights was able to work with the original actor who played H.R. Bloodengutz back in 2011, enabling him to reprise his role and give us an authentic, older version of the character. It has also been revealed that we will be seeing him in video format in between each of the movies, essentially ushering us into the next film. There will also be a Q-Line video for this house where guests will get to see H.R. Bloodengutz in his new role, telling his new story and preparing us for the Halloween Fright-tacular. Creatives claim that there are some classic Halloween textures to be found inside this house. There is a Halloween party taking place at a tiki bar that is overtaken by monsters of the night. We can expect to see monsters, zombies, skeletons, ghosts, and more. Each scene is going to feel very unique, all based around the world of Halloween. To me, personally, this sounds very similar to Slaughter Cinema and Slaughter Cinema 2 from previous years, but possibly taken to the next level. I also think the story opens up an opportunity to reference the previous years of Halloween Horror Nights, and I would not be surprised to see some homages to the previously mentioned Slaughter Cinema. Here's to hoping one of H.R. Bloodengutz' favorite movies is Pumpkin Guts. Regardless, this sounds like a house that will likely be toward the top of my house ranking for the year. Overall, H.R. Bloodengutz has had quite the history at Halloween Horror Nights despite only appearing in 2 previous years, one of which was just a reference. While Lady Luck will go down as the icon for the year, I love the amount of storytelling that was allowed for another character for the year whose influence has absolutely affected the event going forward. I personally wonder if something like Slaughter Cinema would have happened without H.R. Bloodengutz laying down the groundwork. And it's now interesting to think that he will likely be compared to Slaughter Cinema even though he was the original stepping stone for that fan favorite house. H.R. Bloodengutz is a perfect example of how a character can become an icon in the eyes of fans even if they were never officially an HHN icon. Through the brilliant storytelling and design from the creative team to the performers who brought him to life, HR Bloodengutz has become a staple of HHN. I personally cannot wait to see what HR Bloodengutz has in store for us this year at Halloween Horror Nights 35. Thank you for listening to this episode of You Don't Know Jack, an HHN fancast. This podcast is not affiliated with Universal Orlando Resort or any parent companies. If you enjoyed the journey, feel free to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, remember that you don't know Jack, never go alone, and I'll see you in the fog.